Gemara. Mesechta Megillah, Daf Lamed Amid Aleph, about 6 lines from the bottom. The words of Chaliyah's second wide line. Says the Gemara. Chaliyah's bekisisa atzma. We're going through Parshas Shekalim. Parshas Shekalim is in Parshas Kisisa. That's how we pass on halacha. Now, there are times, like it was this year, where Parshas Vayakil was a week after Parshas Shekalim. Or Parshas Shekalim was Vayakil, where you read the Parsha twice. Sometimes comes out Tetzaveh. It does not come out nowadays with our calendar that you read Parshas Shekalim in the week of Parshas Kisisa. However, if that could happen back in the day when they would, the Rosh Chodesh should be according to when witnesses came and saw the new moon. And sometimes you would read Parshas Kisisa, and that same week, Parshas Shekalim. Now, Parshas Shekalim is the first aliyah of Parshas Kisisa, is the Parshas Shekalim, the Parsha which we read to remind everyone to give a machzas hashekel. Exactly what is highlighted here on the screen. So if back in those days, Parshas Kisisa was Parshas Shekalim, what do? Do you read the same Torah reading over again twice in the same week? Says the Gemara. If Parshas Shekalim came out to be on Parshas Kisisa, now the problem you could come up with is that if people go to shul and they hear the Torah reading, they're not necessarily going to notice that it's a special parsha that's being added for Parshas Shekalim, and then get the reminder, time to get your half a shekel coin, give it to the Bais HaMikdash. So what is the solution? Amar Rabbi Tzvi says, Karu shita min vasisa ag vayakel. The first 6 aliyahs, they read Parshas Kisisa, and they go all the way till the end. And then v'kari mekisisa ad vyasisa. And then once again, Shvi'i, the 7th aliyah, should read Parshas Shekalim over again. So the 7th aliyah is reading essentially the beginning of Rishon, beginning of the first aliyah again. Maskefla Abaya. So Abaya asked the question back on Rabbi Tzvi. Hashli Amri Mafreyu Dekari. That's what's happening. Imagine you're reading a parsha, Rishon through the end of the parsha, and then you start repeating. People are going to say you're reading the Torah backwards. And there's even another chashash that's added on, that perhaps people are going to say maybe the Sefer Torah was psul, maybe the Sefer Torah was invalid. And that's why they're having to start over the parsha again. So people will start saying, okay, you don't have to read the Torah in order. You can read the Torah out of order. Some said, just like in the Megillah. If you remember, we read the Megillah. If you read the Megillah out of order, you're not Yotze, you have not fulfilled your obligation. But on Shabbos, let's say I came late to shul, and I heard from the 2nd aliyah and onwards, and now there's another minyan starting, and I'm hearing the Rishon in the next minyan. I've been Yotze Kriyas HaTorah. You don't have to hear the weekly parsha in order. But what's going to happen over here is that somebody comes to shul a little bit late, and he came when right after they finished the middle of Rishon, they finished Nafshe Sechem, the verse 17, continuing with the rest of Aliyah of Rishon. But now I have to make up the first 8, 9 psukim, 11 to 16, the first 6 psukim of the parsha. Oh, I see somebody is starting Parshas Shekalim. I go on here, 6 psukim. And it's possible you could totally forget that this week it's Parshas Shekalim. You might think, even if they're repeating it, that they're actually just reading Parshas Shavua. So in what way do you recognize that it's Parshas Shekalim? Ella Amar Abaya. So Abaya gives his other solution, how you should go about this. Karu Shita ad Vayakil. V'chad tani v'kari mikisisa ad v'yasisa. 6 people read the regular parsha of the week from kisisa all the way till the end of the parsha. And the second one reads afterwards a second time kisisa until v'yasisa, which is a special Shekalim reading. We have a Bais taught in accordance with the opinion of Abaya. You read the parsha, and then also you repeat it as well. Now, has it ever happened yet that you ever somebody skipped an aliyah? You hear the Torah reading and somebody skips? I've seen that, meaning that it happens like with a pasuk or two in an aliyah, correct? Or if someone makes a mistake and they go back 1 or 2 psukim. So you might think to yourself that the reason why they're repeating these first few psukim, maybe the person when they laned, they made a mistake, and that the last aliyah was just fixing the mistake of the first one. So he says that you read 6 people from the beginning of the parsha until Parshas Vayakel, beginning of the next week's parsha, and then 1 person reads kisisa. So you don't repeat anything. You're actually reading the entire thing out of order, meaning you're going the first aliyah. Where is it? Back over here. Starts from verse number 17 and onwards, and then you read Ashri you read the first 6 psukim. So that's a tremendous chiddush to say. Now, nowadays, the halacha, it doesn't really take place. Such a thing to say that you don't really read Parshas Shekalim during the week of Parshas Kisisa, particularly because of these questions that come up. So therefore, saying this thing is really more it's more to not really understand. But the halacha is like Abaya. Tanya Kavasid Abaya. We have a brisa which supports Abaya whenever the Gemara brings an extra brisa to support one side. That's usually how halacha is like. If Parshas Kisisa comes out to be Parshas Shekalim, you read it and you read the beginning of the parsha once again. We'll pause the Gemara over here because now we're going to go back to a new quote in the Mishnah. However, we will do a little bit for Bais Tammuz today. So start off with today is, of course, the 12th of Tammuz, and Bais Tammuz is a day that the Friedrich Rebbe was released from prison in Tsarist Russia. And the story and all the details are very fascinating. 1927, for a long time, the Seksia, specifically the Jewish section of the Communist Party, was trying to destroy Yiddishkeit, and Friedrich Rebbe was standing very strong, stalwart against them. And Friedrich Rebbe was arrested 4 times during under the communist rule. So in a period of 7 years, arrested 4 times. Many times the arrest was, threatening to be serious. Baruch Hashem became less serious, and after he was freed after a few hours. At one time, they're going to arrest the Friedrich Rebbe and send him to Siberia, and in the end, the deal was made. If the Friedrich Rebbe leaves the city of Rostov, then they're not going to arrest him then. He had to leave immediately. Even his family stayed behind. He went to the city of Leningrad. Then it was originally Petrograd or Petersburg. I think it went through both names. Depends on what time it was.
Well, it depends. Under Peter the Great, it was called Petersburg.
Right.
And when the communists came in, they didn't like the word "burg." It was a German word, So they call it Petrograd, in Russian, Grad means city.
And then afterwards, they changed it to Leningrad.
Yeah.
A little bit later, saying after Lenin died.
Yeah.
So after Lenin died, they call it Leningrad. Now, why did Peter the Great ever build a city there? I don't know why. A city is cloudy 300 days of the year. You only see the sun for about 60 days a year.
No, he wanted it to be a window to the west.
There was a war between Finland and Russia, and Russia won this huge area, but it was a barren wasteland. So he said, if I build my capital city here, people will want to live over here. So that's why he built this huge, beautiful city in the middle of Leningrad. And this was a very prestigious city throughout Tsarist times. I was there. Yeah, I'm going to show some pictures from it. Throughout Tsarist times, and Jews were not allowed to live in Leningrad unless they had a special permit. So the Jews who lived there were very, very wealthy. Baron Ginsburg, Paul Yaakov, railroad magnates, lumber magnates. And of course, our Rebbes, they say it's the only city where every single one of the Chabad Rebbeim were in the city of Leningrad. The Alter Rebbe sat in jail there. The Frierdiker Rebbe sat in jail there. Our Rebbe almost sat in jail there. But every single Chabad Rebbe, besides the Mittler Rebbe, sat in jail in a different city. Every single Chabad Rebbe sat in jail in prison in Leningrad. It was a capital city. Now, when communists came, they took away all the limitations. Jews could live everywhere. And where the Frierdiker Rebbe lived was a very interesting, beautiful building. I've been in there. It's like very high, Paris-style type of ceilings. It's a building where the Frierdiker Rebbe lived in Leningrad. So I just pulled up some pictures over here. You see it on the screen. Okay, this is in Lubavitch. This is, that's Bais Nersin. This is just the house in Lubavitch. Frierdiker Rebbe was born in Lubavitch on this day, on Yud Beis Tammuz, year 1880. Now, this is the Frierdiker Rebbe's home from the outside, over here. This is a home the Frierdiker Rebbe was living in Leningrad. These, yeah, in Russia. You see my father here. It's interesting, this home became like Lubavitch got replaced into Leningrad for about 3 years, 1923 till 1927. If you see over here, these stairs over here, it's the stairs from inside the courtyard. And there's descriptions about these stairs were full of Hasidim from the stairs, all the way going downstairs to the outside, waiting to go into Yechidus by the Frierdiker Rebbe. Now, mind you, nobody was walking around the streets at that time, because if you walked around the streets, the chances are you get stopped and questioned, and if they don't like the way you look, or then they'll bring you in for questioning, and you might take a one-way trip to who knows where, Siberia. But it became a very well-known place. And that door is the door to where the Frierdiker Rebbe's Yechidus room was. It's apartment number 8, I think. However, they changed around the apartment numbers. What? Which? Stair rail, yeah. Yeah, brown, looks like. No, we came into this apartment. So from the outside, there's a story that the Rebbe Chaim Mushka told. She was going out, she was meeting the Rebbe. They weren't married yet, but they were meeting each other at that time. They were unofficially engaged at that point, and they came back and they saw all the lights on in the entire house. So Rebbe Chaim Mushka told the Rebbe, Rebbe, you go in, let me go in by myself. Because if you go in, and there's something wrong, they're not gonna let you leave. And she walked in, and she was able to tell a message to the Rebbe who was outside, that she said, Schneerson, we have guests. So we always thought this is a porch, but seemingly if we're not 100% sure if this was part of his apartment or not. So either it's from one of these windows or from one of these doors. The address you can see over here is 22 Machavaya. That's the name of the street. It was a little bit away from the central Jewish shuls and communities and all that, because I think it was suspicion. We call the Rebbe's Kliamke, the doorknob, to the Frierdiker Rebbe's home. The Frierdiker Rebbe, his apartment number was, what's the number? Apartment number 12 or 8. We went into that apartment. We rang the bell. We had someone who speaks Russian, says, can we come in? A few minutes, we'll pay you something. And she didn't realize how many people are coming in. But the numbers were actually turned around. That's a lady who owns that apartment. You can see inside, it's very tall, very beautiful. But what's unique, the Frierdiker Rebbe actually writes about this apartment, the one we were in. The Frierdiker Rebbe's Yechidus room was right on the other side of this wall. And the other, there were two large apartments put together. That's where the Fabrengens took place, the Mamarim, Yechidusin, and everything else. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said that the KGB or NKVD, that was called then, they used to put listening devices on the walls in the apartment next door to listen in on everything that goes on in the Frierdiker Rebbe's Yechidus room. They wanted to know who the Frierdiker Rebbe is sending to which place, right? How's the Frierdiker Rebbe supporting, paying al malamdim, the teachers, the mikvahs, chadarim, shoichtim, and everything else, the shows, the rabbanim, and everything else is happening. How the Frierdiker Rebbe would always stay several steps ahead of the KGB. And they wanted to arrest the Frierdiker Rebbe for a long time, but the nail came to the head. The Russian government wanted to make they were very successful. They wanted to uproot religion. So with the Russian Orthodox Church, they made conferences of priests where everyone was taught and coerced to become very free thinking, and they used to get priests to denounce the religion and destroy churches. And they wanted to do the same thing with Yiddishkeit. And they wanted to get all the rabbis together in entire Russia for a big conference. The Frierdiker Rebbe stopped this conference and he fought against it tooth and nail. And it was exactly at this time when he was arrested. That's one of the main reasons he was actually put into prison for that, fighting against the government in that sense. And the conference never took place. He was warned to run away. They're looking at you, they're going to run after you. He was warned about it. And Frierdiker Rebbe says, a Schneerson is not afraid. Schneersons are not scared. And indeed, this is from this house, the Frierdiker Rebbe was arrested, and you could read very, very suggested reading to read everything. The Frierdiker Rebbe writes about it. Absolutely phenomenal, how fearless, etc. the Frierdiker Rebbe was. When the Rebbe heard the news, the Rebbe quickly ran to Kollel Eretz Hatzvi Chaim Altois, was one of the confidants of the Frierdiker Rebbe's household. Together, I have some pictures. I have to just look at that day. We took pictures, but I didn't put it over here. All over Leningrad, Pittsburgh, you have this very interesting phenomena that the drainage pipes go along the buildings on the side. It's a very interesting phenomena. Like over here, the gutters are usually in the corner of the building. Sometimes you can't see it. Over there, you walk down the street, every building, fancy buildings, all have gutters on the outside going straight up. Mm-hmm. And the gutter pipes are not like our 15th of a millimeter thick gutter pipes. They're strong, thick metal, iron, steel. And so the Rebbe climbed up a drainage pipe of one of these buildings to call Rabbi Chaim Altois, tell him the news that the Frierdiker Rebbe has guests, meaning that he's being arrested, and to quickly hide anything that could be incriminating the Frierdiker Rebbe. Two of them ran together to Reb Chaim Lieberman's house, who was the Frierdiker Rebbe's secretary. Every building in Russia, till today actually, has a super who's government appointed, and in order to get past them, they pretended they were drunk, and they went up to Chaim Lieberman's house, and then together they managed to destroy any incriminating evidence that would have incriminated in any way the Frierdiker Rebbe. And then Chaim Lieberman, very shortly afterwards, right after they left, they actually came and arrested him. He was sent to Siberia. After about a year in Siberia, the Frierdiker Rebbe at that point already was released from Russia, managed to get him freed, and he came with the Frierdiker Rebbe to Poland, to America. So at least we got to be in that house next door. We said that we went to Maimer, we went to Fabrengen. We got to feel experience what Chassidim were like waiting for Yechidus by the Frierdiker Rebbe. The prison was not very far. The prison where the Frierdiker Rebbe sat, called Shparlerka. When you go there till today, you could feel tremendous pachad, tremendous fear. People who went there with cameras and pictures, and they were taking lots of pictures. And till today, it's an active prison. And a police car, a bunch of burly police came out at them. Who are you? What are you doing? Let's see your ID. Today, nowadays, I'm sure it will be much, much, much more difficult to do such a thing. Today's climate. Here he says, "See Shparlerna Ulitza." This is Shparlerka, the prison. In this prison, many, many people were shot. Thousands, tens of thousands. And a great-grandfather, my father's grandfather, he was shot in the basement of this prison. Yeah, he was shot here. There were thousands and tens of thousands, probably, of people who were shot and killed in this place. And the Frierdiker Rebbe was among them, supposed to be among them. Matter of fact,
there's a video. It's in Russian with English subtitles. It does have some, well, I would call improper pictures of Galochem, but they show how they rounded up people, hundreds and hundreds of people, and they bring them down to a basement, and there's music playing, and they're telling them
walls are padded there, correct.
And then they put them up against the wall and they shoot them.
You're correct.
You can see it. You can see the video.
Oh, we went there with we had a
called Chekist.
Chekist.
And then those days, I think it was called the Cheka.
They called the Cheka.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but there was no exception. Many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of millions of people obviously were killed all over, died or killed.
It's called the Red Terror.
It happened twice in the Red Terror, and then you had the Red Purge. The Great Purge happened in the 30s. We're talking about the 20s now.
Right after they came in.
Correct.
Right after the revolution.
Right after Lenin died.
In order to, and it included the famine in Ukraine.
Right, the Holodomor. It's called the Holodomor, right? Holodomor. Correct. But this is the Frierdiker Rebbe, the prison where he was. You can see there's a photographer over there. He's Ukrainian. At that point, it was right when Russia invaded Crimea. This is 2017. So Russia invaded Crimea, I think 2016 or 2012. But he was a Ukrainian citizen. He was scared. He says, "I don't want to be seen filming." They find out I'm Ukrainian. It might be getting into issues here. So he with his phone, they were filming. But it's very interesting. So nobody even wanted to walk by there. You walk by there, people felt a tremendous fear during those times. When the Frierdiker Rebbe was going to be freed, the Chassidim found out that the Frierdiker Rebbe was supposed to go free on Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. They were going to free the Frierdiker Rebbe on a Thursday, and it was part of, they had no choice but to free him. They were forced because of all the international pressure to free the Frierdiker Rebbe. And they decided they're going to at least do something to get back at the Frierdiker Rebbe, and they were going to send him to Gullus, to exile, to Kastorma, and they were going to make him go on Thursday, and it's a 3-day journey, then by train. Now it's a lot less, and he will arrive there on Shabbos. Just to get back at the Frierdiker Rebbe, they should be traveling on Shabbos. And the Frierdiker Rebbe says, "No, I am not going to travel on Shabbos." They said, "You're going to have to stay in prison longer." And he said, "Yes." Now, usually in Russia, it was a one chance to leave prison. If you didn't leave when was your turn, when was your chance, you lost it. Frierdiker Rebbe was not scared at all. If you read all the diaries of Frierdiker Rebbe, and he stayed in prison an extra 3 days. He stayed in prison Thursday, Friday, and Shabbos, and he was eventually released on Sunday. He went to his home for 6 hours, and then from there he took the train to Kastorma, a city of exile, where he was for 1 week exactly until today's day. Yud Tammuz, he was given the news he was freed. Because
if I'm not mistaken, Rebbe Chaim went with him into exile.
Right.
I think he accompanied him.
Right. Only Rebbe Chaim Mushka, correct? And it was only one of his family who went with him.
And the idea was to have him for the rest of his life over there in exile, right?
The idea, the first was they're going to execute him. Frierdiker Rebbe was called in when they showed him his verdict. First was a verdict, death by firing squad. And then it was crossed out and the word no was written. Then it said 10 years in Solovki Islands. You know where that is?
Somewhere in Siberia.
Yeah, it's right inside the Arctic Circle.
Holy moon.
In a prison, labor death camp, that type. And it was also crossed out, said the word no. Tremendous amount of pressure. Maybe tomorrow we'll have more time, or tomorrow I'll be Rabbi Darren. And then it says 3 years in exile in Kastorma. And even that, Baruch Hashem, with tremendous miracles, was averted after 1 week. So my grandfather was a bacher in yeshiva then. Wasn't a yeshiva which had a big fancy building. It was all illegal yeshivas, underground yeshivas. And he came from the town of Neville, where one of the people called Lulav, who was arresting the Frierdiker Rebbe, very involved. Like his parents were Chassidim, his brothers were Chassidim.
And you said he was arrested with the Frierdiker Rebbe?
He was one of the Yevsexia, Jewish section, one of the communist cadres.
Oh, and the other, and Nachmanson.
Nachmanson. So sorry, Nachmanson came from Neville, Lulav came from Riga. They're both Chabad Chassidim, both of their parents.
Oh, they were part of the communist.
They were correct, and they prided themselves in being as anti-religious as they could. And the descriptions of what they did, and Friedrich Rebbe writes about them quite a lot. My grandfather remembers Nachmanson when he's growing up in Neville. He has several stories about him.
And they all were from Lubavitch families, right?
These two were from Lubavitch families, correct. And they became avowed Yevsektia, communist Jewish section. And what happened is, they thought they're going to become promoted, get ahead if they join the Communist Party. A couple of years later, in 1930-31, all of them were purged. The whole Yevsektia was killed out. Right, so it just didn't get them too far ahead. And you remember Nachmanson for example, by his brother's, by his mother's levaya, his mother's funeral in Neville. So when all the boys said Kaddish, it was already after the Friedrich Rebbe was arrested, and after the whole parsha, and everyone knew who he was. So he stood by the side and wouldn't say Kaddish. And my grandfather explained he was too embarrassed to say Kaddish in front of all the other people over there, Chassidim, who knows what he does. But as a matter of fact, he had no connection to his father, but he would during the time that Friedrich Rebbe was in prison, and Chassidim had no idea if he's alive or dead or what's happening, and he would go every single day, pass by his father in a park, and he would say 2 words, "Lept," he's alive. He did it just for his father. Now, Chassidim were expecting the Friedrich Rebbe to be freed from prison. That's what they heard from behind the grapevine, from all the Mrs. Peshkova and all the other Red Cross and all the other things that they did. And they didn't want the Friedrich Rebbe to leave. And he's leaving this prison building, right? Correct? When Friedrich Rebbe is leaving the prison building, Friedrich Rebbe should not have to carry his own bag, right? I think this is a gate where cars went in. I think that's what the Friedrich Rebbe says. When they wouldn't let them in, they came to there about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. They wouldn't let them inside, and so they couldn't exactly wait outside Shpalerka, because just the word Shpalerka caused terror in people's eyes, in people. But there was a chassid who had a brother who had a little small tiny store right across the exit and entrance, across the street of the Shpalerka prison. So they had 2 chassidim standing and sitting there the entire day in this little tiny store just to watch the entrance to wait for the Friedrich Rebbe to come out. And of course, when he comes out, they should get a car or a taxi, and provide for make sure the Friedrich Rebbe comes home for 6 hours before he's being sent away to Kostroma. But the Friedrich Rebbe, as we said, did not want to leave prison on Thursday, Friday, because it would meant arriving or traveling on Shabbos. So the whole day they waited Thursday, and they were disappointed. The Friedrich Rebbe did not come out. They waited a whole day Friday over there, and again the Friedrich Rebbe did not come out. They waited a whole day Shabbos. You never know what they're going to do. It's not like the communists ask a Rava Shaila, could we free him on Shabbos? Could we let him? And the Friedrich Rebbe did not come out. Now on Sunday, that's when they didn't let anybody, they didn't free anybody in that day, because it was I guess a legal civic holiday, civic they arrest. I mean, they would arrest people on Sunday. That wasn't a problem. But letting out on Sunday was something they would do. So Sunday they didn't wait, and said they're going to continue waiting on Monday. But special for the Friedrich Rebbe, they came in and they let the Friedrich Rebbe out on that Sunday. So the Friedrich Rebbe came out. Actually, there was nobody waiting for the Friedrich Rebbe. He actually carried his own suitcase with him, and he took the public tramvai, the trolley car, the public trolley car, back to his home. He was there for 6 hours in his home. And Friedrich Rebbe is in Kostroma. And in Kostroma, this one. Okay, let's do a few minutes of this. Let's see, just make sure everyone out there could hear the audio better. So let me just share computer sound. Ready? Let's see if you can hear it out there.
He's sentenced the 6th Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak of Lubavitch, to 3 years of exile in an attempt to cripple his efforts to keep Judaism alive in Russia.
И у нас каждую субботу молились. В общем, все выполняли, что положено.
efforts to keep Judaism alive in Russia. He was sent to Kostroma, a small city over 400 miles away from his headquarters in Leningrad. Miraculously, he was released from his exile after just 10 days. During his time in Kostroma, the previous Rebbes stayed with the family of the local shochet, Reb Yerachmiel Kugel. Reb Yerachmiel's daughter, Rosa, was 12 years old at the time.
Его это прислал, был такой у нас, тоже к нам приехал с Ленинграда, выслали. Кузнецов Арон. У него отец был, если я не ошибаюсь, был председателем в Ленинграде. Его тоже посадили и даже присудили расстрел, и его расстреляли. Читал, опять уходил, и дома занимался. Только все время у него были книжки. Он и читал и Торы, и книги, все.
Okay, this is the daughter, the
У
Frierdiker
нас
Rebbe
было
stayed in the
много
house
еврейских.
of a local shochet. It was a Chabad Chassid, Yerachmiel Kugel, and that's his daughter who they interviewed. She's very, very old.
She's speaking Russian, isn't
Speaking Russian, yes, she stayed in Russia. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, he was, every week he had to go register at the local office to tell them that he's still there. He hasn't run away from the city. Once a week he had to register. And the rest of the time he had to figure out his own way. So the Frierdiker Rebbe was with the Chassid Rabbi Chaim Altois. Before the Frierdiker Rebbe was sent to Kostroma, he sent the Chassid Michal Dvarkin to the city of Kostroma, and he opened up a cheder of Jewish boys to teach Jewish boys Torah, and he fixed the mikvah in the city of Kostroma to prepare the way for the Frierdiker Rebbe to come to Kostroma. Frierdiker Rebbe davened in the shul. He's now a shliach in that city, in Kostroma. And this is this year, just about a month ago, a whole bunch of yeshiva boys from Moscow all went to Kostroma to go. This is the shul where the Frierdiker Rebbe davened, and as well as it went to the train station where the Frierdiker Rebbe came, and this is where the Frierdiker Rebbe was given the news that he's going free. The house where the Frierdiker Rebbe stayed, I think, was actually knocked down. This is a government building, and this is where the Frierdiker Rebbe received the news that he's going free. So, end off with a short explanation, a beer. There were 3 different reactions which the Frierdiker Rebbe described of 3 different people in the city of Kostroma. When they heard the news the Frierdiker Rebbe is going free, and you have to realize this is like beyond the shock. You know, it was much easier to walk to the moon and back, to come out alive and be freed from Soviet prison, especially with the severity of the Frierdiker Rebbe's accusations in those times, communist Russia.
It sounds more like actually the probability that Donald Trump actually survived the assassination.
Lahavdil.
Exactly.
I mean, Lahavdil, if you want to compare.
No.
I mean, again,
in terms of probability.
Probability, correct.
Yeah.
So the Frierdiker Rebbe he went to the NKVD offices in order to sign in, and the person smiled and says, "I'm happy to tell you the news. You don't have to sign in. You're free to go." Being it's Russia and it's bureaucracy, and it was some legal holiday that day, why not? Frierdiker Rebbe couldn't go free, couldn't leave that day. He had to leave on Yud Gimel, on the 13th of Tammuz.
Tomorrow's a holiday too?
Correct. So we also don't say Tachanun tomorrow as well. Now, the Rebbe actually points out how most of the Chabad Rebbeim, I think all the Chabad Rebbeim, the Yom HaGeula, the day of redemption, is a 2-day Yom Tov. You test Kislev, but it finished on Chav Kislev when the Alter Rebbe left the house of the Menagid. The Mittel Rebbe is also, I mean, it's Yud Kislev, his day he went free, 2 years, but Tes Kislev is his birthday. We also have a 2-day Hemshech connection. The Tzemach said that we don't celebrate any particular day as his day of redemption. Perhaps Ner HaYed Chanukah, the 5th night of Chanukah, but we don't do it as his redemption date. And Frierdiker Rebbe Yud Beis Gimel Tammuz as well, and he explains the importance of it. And it's like Yom Tiv outside of Eretz Yisrael has 2 days. because there's such special things that are brought down to this world. So the Frierdiker Rebbe is in Kostroma. He goes to the NKVD, sign in for his weekly signature, but he would not get a weekly paycheck. And he went with the chassid of Elia Chaim Altois. Says Elia Chaim Altois was with the Frierdiker Rebbe when the Frierdiker Rebbe had to sign that he's there, and he was told the news. When he saw the news, the Frierdiker Rebbe went free. He became completely overwhelmed. No, not a Frierdiker. Frierdiker Rebbe was calm and collected. The Rebbe Elia Chaim Altois was a chassid very, very close to the Frierdiker Rebbe. He was managed to leave Russia with a short time. He was, when it came to the Rebbe's wedding, he was actually the shomer of the Rebbe, and he described such beautiful, flowery descriptions of what he writes about the Rebbe. Young man who's humble, quiet. You never know anything, but he got to see the Rebbe firsthand, and he saw the mincha the Rebbe davened on the day of his chassan. He describes it. He describes there was a Tishrei where the Frierdiker Rebbe was in America, 1930, and the Rebbe came to Riga to be with the Frierdiker Rebbe's family, and describes the tears and the avodah of the Rebbe during that Tishrei in Riga. Unfortunately, he was killed in the Holocaust by the Nazis in Riga on the big show together. The Bishop of Masmid and Chacha Fegin and Pascal Himmelstein and many great chassidim. He was killed, burnt alive in a shul in Riga. So Rebbe Chaim Altois, he's the one that the Rebbe went to inform him that together to destroy any incriminating documents against the Frierdiker Rebbe. So this Rebbe Chaim Altois, his face turned colors, half white, half red, to the point that the Frierdiker Rebbe was scared for him because he was so overwhelmed and flustered. The Frierdiker Rebbe had to calm him down. The Frierdiker Rebbe pulled him by the shoulders and told him to calm down and to bring him down in order that he could absorb the news. So he was totally overwhelmed. Too much, like we just learned in the Mimer, too much iris in the Kalim, right? Not enough. In Michal Dvarkin, he was dancing throughout the streets of Kostroma, holding a big bottle of Malachayim and singing, Net, Net, Nikava. There's no one else but Hashem. Nothing else but Hashem. Now, it says he did not actually drink it, but he danced throughout the entire city and throughout the house and throughout the streets, singing Net Net Nikava. There's nothing but Hashem. So the Michal Dvarkin, he passed away Tashin Tess, Erev Shavuos, 1949 in New York. So Michal Dvarkin, he worked among non-Jews for many years, and he would very often use Russian expressions. So therefore, he expressed himself with Russian words. Net Net Nikava. There's nothing but Hashem. And we can't say Hashem's name in other languages. So therefore it says Krama Yava, which means besides him. Kramiva Anava. And it means Hashem. Then there was in the house of the Sheikh of Kostroma, there was a young boy of 9 years old, who was a young boy, didn't have a great understanding yet of Chassidus or what a Rebbe is or all that. Growing up in Kostroma, he couldn't see live streams of the Frierdiker Rebbe's Mamarim. They didn't have Kahas sending in the newest publications to them. And we saw the big commotion, wanted to know what's happening. He says, the Rebbe is free. And so he says, okay, he got excited too. And he, on the fence of the house, he made a handstand, started walking around, dancing on his hand, making a cartwheel on the fence. So this is a boy born during communism, raised during communism, right? Probably did not go to a proper cheder because Michal Dvarkin had to open a cheder there, right? So his father was a sheikhet, but didn't have any. And that's why he reacted. So, the Rebbe brought a lesson to learn from there that every single person goes through different stages: childhood, adulthood, and old age, and not just in your lifetime, but every day. You have your childhood stage, when you become belligerent or irrational, then you have your adulthood stage, then you have your elderly age, like in Michal. And however, Geula has to express itself in every single part of your day. whether if you're like a part of your day where you're in the mode of a little child, and the part of your day you're in the mode of a adult, grown up, if you're in the mode of your day where you're an elderly person. But every single one of these days, every single person has to use, express, and live with the Kollel wherever they are. So with that, we will take a short break.